Imagine if everything we knew about world history was only half the truth. Imagine there was something so ancient, so dangerous that scientists chose to hide it, not study it. Today, you'll hear a story not recorded in history books, not taught in classrooms, and never reported in any media outlet. The story of a strange artifact discovered beneath the sands of the Egyptian desert, of an ancient monster that should have remained buried, and of a young archaeologist who accidentally broke a seal guarded for thousands of years. This story is not for those who fear the truth, but if you dare, watch until the end. And share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe that there is something older than human civilization, and more terrifying than we can imagine? The Egyptian desert sands hold secrets that scientists have never been able to uncover. Behind the hubbub of official archaeological projects, a small team works in secret. Led by a young archaeologist named Rayhan Al-Fath, this expedition is unfunded by the government, undocumented in academic journals, and unsung by the scientific community. He has only an ancient compass, a torn map inherited from his father, and one belief: that the greatest truths are never found on the surface. That morning, under a scorching sun, Rayhan's team reached an area of ruins unmarked on modern maps. The ruins seemed untouched by time. Black stone pillars stood silently, adorned with carvings of symbols unknown to Egyptian, Persian, or Babylonian civilizations. The symbols resembled claws, circular eyes, and figures with animal heads and human bodies. "Isn't this hieroglyphics?" asked Rana, the team's expert in ancient languages. "No, this isn't from the world we know," Rayhan replied quietly, his eyes unblinking as he stared at the strange symbols. As they walked down a partially open underground passage, Rana stumbled over a flat stone, which turned out to be the lid of a hidden chamber. Cautiously, Rayhan and his team opened the gap. The pungent smell of metal and old mold immediately wafted in. In the darkness, they found a large stone coffin sealed with black wax and engraved with the same symbols, clearer and more menacing. The coffin was unlocked. Rayhan slowly opened the lid. Inside there were no bones, no treasure. All there was a metal cylinder about the size of an adult's arm. It looked like part of a tool, but not an Egyptian one, not any ancient tool. It was inscribed in a language Rana couldn't even translate. But as the object was lifted, the ground rumbled softly. The air grew heavy, and for a moment all sound disappeared. No wind, no birdsong, absolute silence. Rana looked at Rayhan, her face pale. "I think we awakened something." Rayhan held the cylinder. His eyes glinted. "This isn't a historical relic. This is part of something that's still alive." Above ground, the sky suddenly filled with dark clouds. Thunder rumbled, though there was no rain. Far away, seismic detectors at a research outpost began to indicate unusual underground activity. However, the report was suppressed before it reached the public. Elsewhere, an elderly professor received an uncensored letter. It contained only one sentence in red ink. "He has been found." In an old wooden-floored laboratory tucked away in a corner of Oxford, Professor Elias Marwan held the letter with trembling hands. For over 40 years, he had been researching forbidden, unpublished texts. Texts he believed were not of this world. As he read the short sentence in the letter, his face turned bone-white. "He has been found." The sentence meant one thing: the ancient prophecy preserved in the Atin 87 manuscript, the very manuscript that had once nearly cost him his academic title, had finally come true. Wasting no time, Elias opened a small vault beneath the floor of his private library. Inside was a copy of an artifact he had discovered years earlier, a disc-shaped copper piece bearing engravings identical to those Rayhan had reported in an earlier email. He compared the images. They were identical. He whispered to himself, "The monster is real." Meanwhile, in the Egyptian desert, Rayhan and his team were experiencing unexplained disturbances. Compasses spun erratically. Communications devices stopped working. And since that night, one of the team members, a technician named Ghazi, disappeared without a trace. They found him the next morning, standing stiffly on the edge of a rocky hill, staring blankly at the rising sun. His skin was pale and his body cold. He was still alive. But he couldn't speak. His hand continued to draw the same symbol in the sand, a circle within a triangle, with 4 lines radiating outward. It was the same symbol that was also on the metal artifact. Rayhan became increasingly convinced that the artifact was more than just a relic. He took it to the observation tent that night. When the sky was full of stars, he pointed the artifact north, following the shadow pattern outlined in his father's notes. Suddenly, the artifact lit up with a faint blue light. No sound, no vibrations, but something was beginning to awaken deep underground. In his dreams that night, Rayhan saw a giant, horned figure, imprisoned in a dark, dome-shaped chamber of stone. A deep voice echoed in his head. "I am not a creature of this earth, but this earth is my prison." He awoke gasping for breath and bleeding from his ears. As morning came, Elias Marwan arrived at the camp in a private helicopter, carrying a manuscript, a warning, and one shocking fact: that the artifact wasn't a piece of history. It was a key. And the monster sealed away thousands of years ago might not be contained any longer. The sky above the desert began to change color. Dark clouds shrouded the sun, bringing an unnatural chill. The birds disappeared from the sky. The sounds of nature vanished. Nature seemed to hold its breath, as if it knew something very ancient and very dangerous was awakening from its long slumber. Professor Elias Marwan stood before a metal artifact that was now beginning to pulsate softly. He reread a fragment of ancient text from the 1887 manuscript in a low voice. "The blood of the earth has dried. The seal will not last forever. If the key is awakened by unsuspecting hands, the guardian of the heavens will open its eyes once more." Rayhan grasped the artifact. He wanted to smash it, but every time he brought the hammer closer, it emitted a heat energy that sent him flying backward. "We must reseal this location," Elias said quickly. "This artifact is a kind of transmitter. It has awakened something we cannot defeat." But it was too late. The ground shook violently. The rocky hill to the west began to crumble, revealing a giant fissure leading to an underground passage that spiraled into the bowels of the earth. The air smelled of metal and sulfur. Rayhan, Rana, and Elias stood frozen as the figure emerged from the darkness. The creature wasn't like a monster from a movie or fairy tale. It towered, its skin like molten metal, shimmering with a bluish-green light. Its eyes, not 2 but 7, were scattered across its irregular face. From its back dangled wing-like structures, but made of bone and black crystal. It didn't roar. Just, "What?" And the earth returned its gaze with an earthquake that devastated the plains. Scientists and soldiers sent by local authorities began to arrive, but none of them understood what they were facing. They tried shooting, trying to seal the breach with explosives. All in vain. Elias knelt down, crying. "This isn't a creature. This is a guardian. This is punishment." Rayhan, breathing heavily, walked toward the giant figure, carrying the artifact. He knew the only way to completely stop the awakening was to sacrifice the energy that activated it. The artifact wasn't just a key. Could also be a seal. As it approached, the monster lowered its head. Its numerous eyes narrowed, as if recognizing Rayhan's face. And without warning, Rayhan thrust the artifact into the ground, right beneath the creature's feet. A blinding light erupted. The air felt like it was being sucked out of the world. A dimensional cracking sound rang out, like glass shattering inside one's head. In an instant, the creature vanished. The spiral passageway was covered in rubble once again. The artifact crumbled to ash. The earthquake stopped. The sky cleared again. Rayhan fell to his knees. His body was injured, but he was alive. Professor Elias approached him. His eyes were wet but full of respect. "You have done what scientists like us fear to do. Seek the truth. And then silence it again." Rayhan didn't answer. He stared up at the sky. For far above, the stars in the sky formed a pattern no human had ever seen before. The pattern moved slowly, forming the same symbol Ghazi had drawn in the sand.